The nation waits to see how he will be dealing with Dr. Zweli Mkhize. The embattled health minister is mired in the controversial R150 million Digital Vibes tender saga. While there are growing calls for his resignation, latest reports indicate that he may already be on his way out. According to various media outlets, President Cyril Ramaphosa has given Mkhize options that he steps aside pending the conclusion of a probe by the Special Investigating Unit, or Ramaphosa removes him as part of a cabinet reshuffle, which would mean potential changes to other portfolios too, or Mkhize simply resigns from his post. To discuss this, we are joined by political analyst Lukhona Mnguni. Lukhona, a very good morning. What are the options that Zweli Mkhize is likely to take, in your opinion?
Well, Hugo, good morning to you. I think it's more about what would be the most ideal form of action rather than what we probably think he will do. We have gotten to a point where what we expect of our politicians and what they choose to do in this country can be polar opposites. But I think at this moment in time, it says a lot that he remains in office and somewhat defiant of the revelations around his name. Whether or not he was involved in the awarding of the tender, the proximity of the people that are involved in this digital vibes saga, and the benefit that seems to have accrued to his son, and there is no rebuttal that he never received this, or whether or not they didn't pay for the renovations of the Mkhize house in Johannesburg. So all of that taken together, I believe that by now the minister ought to have resigned, because the last thing that you want to create, Hugo, is a situation wherein there is uncertainty and loss of confidence in the government at a time when a government needs all the confidence it can get from citizens to try and fight this battle of COVID-19 pandemic in the main.
Can anything be salvaged by Mkhize, bearing in mind that he's got three options, if he were to take one option and not the other?
Well, look, I think it's always better if you take the burden and heat off your political principle and you just simply walk away, because once you put your political principles in a difficult position wherein they have to fire you or remove you, it tends to have sustained political tension throughout the organization, and it galvanizes some people against your political principle, because you now put yourself up as though you are a victim of the political principle rather than a victim of your own lack of integrity and ethical conduct.
Now, moving forward, should he step aside, get fired, or resign? What would that have an impact on the rollout, certainly, of COVID vaccines? Will that impact his governmental portfolio?
Not necessarily, Hugo. If all that we know about the vaccine rollout is most transparent and updated information, I don't think it should, because then the next person would just simply build up on that work that has already been done and make sure that the department is running efficiently and that the entire cabinet rallies behind making decisions timelessly for the vaccine rollout. However, if we don't have the full information in the public domain, and let's say there were conversations behind the scenes, there was some fighting about which vaccines to procure or not, and the vaccine mix that we have in the country, has the health regulatory authority SABRA been pushed enough to accommodate the other vaccines that have filed for approval, such as your Sinovac and your Sputnik 5 and so on. If those fights are part and parcel of the politics that may unfold around Dr. Zweli Mkhize, then in that instance, there would be some material effect in terms of the vaccine rollout, because we don't know who would be winning the difficult battles behind the scenes in terms of the vaccine mix that we need in the country, the implications of that on the fiscus and so on. But as I'm saying, if all that we have in the public domain is the most transparent and updated information, then I do not see how this him stepping aside or resigning will have material bearing on the vaccine rollout.
Now, let's come back a little bit and look at what the president has said, which is he was waiting for SIU in some quarters to complete its investigations, and then throw in the mix the step-aside resolution, which suggests that you step aside when a crime or an alleged crime is before the courts on the one hand, or has been taken through the Integrity Commission. What does it say about the processes within the ANC and the potential damage of timeous processes when there are allegations such as these?
Well, it simply means that the ANC continues to dilly-dally around corrupt conduct and corrupt individuals who are alleged to have been involved in very serious crimes. And like we say now, this matter is not before a court of law by any chance. However, there is a lack of rebuttal of the evidence that keeps mounting, particularly from the reports of the Daily Maverick. Of course, the SIU has said last week they would be handing over the report to the president soon so that he's able to act, because they understand that the president will place a great degree of, reliance on their report. But, Hugo, this is not even about whether or not the matter is before a court of law. As I'm saying, perception is also very vital, especially at a moment like this. There's a perception now that Dr. Zweli Mkhize benefited his friends. He can try and rebut that. He can be cleared off by the SIU report, but I don't think South Africans will retreat from that point of perception. They might just see it as mere a cover-up, or in some instances they might interpret it as, there isn't seriousness with other people in terms of the serious allegations that damage the confidence that citizens have in government, that damage the standing of the government. So I don't even think President Ramaphosa ought to have entangled himself around the step-aside related resolution or even awaiting the SIU report. At a moment like this, you just can't have the person who is at the forefront of helping you fight this virus being embroiled in so deep and difficult allegations.
Now, the president has continued to speak out against corruption and his desire to act against it. The question now is, who will be the last man standing when we look at the number of ANC politicians that are mired in allegations of corruption?
Well, certainly. I mean, the ANC itself is aware. We often go back to what I say. We used to joke about it when then Minister Batabile spoke about everybody having smaller Nyana skeletons. It was really a point of humor, but I think we are now starting to appreciate the significance of the statement of knowledge that she was making at the time, aware of her colleagues and how they are. I think really the ANC lives on the hope that some of us will be discovered and some of us will not be discovered. I mean, President Ramaphosa has a serious load on his hands. The allegations around Minister Gwede Mantashe, for example, on the emergency procurement of energy recently are mounting, are growing. He has a deputy minister there who every now and again at the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, Deputy Minister Kodwa, his name keeps popping up as having been a capped politician. It's very difficult, Hugo, when you are choosing from a cohort of leaders who are significantly compromised historically and otherwise, and who try to talk the language that you are talking of cleaning up and fighting corruption, but unfortunately their morality standing is unable to come and match the elevation of good conduct and ethical leadership that you are demanding from them.
Now, with the elections scheduled for October, what does this do for the ANC? How much pressure does it put on the political party?
Well, look, Hugo, the October elections are by nature local. So while there may be these scandals at a national level that compromise the general image of the organization to society, they are not automatically going to be a referendum on those issues. I know that in 2016, when we saw the hung metropolitan municipalities, we said it was a referendum to the leadership or under President Zuma at the time. But I think because they are local in nature, those elections, there are good leaders of the ANC in communities who will continue to be elected simply because of the work that they are doing for their communities, whether as ward councillors or PR councillors. So there is a bit of distinction. If it were probably a national and provincial election, we would place greater emphasis in terms of what the shenanigans that are happening at a national level will have a bearing on the elections. But you got to remember, in some municipalities, people did not receive their social protection that was meant to be extended, whether by way of food parcels, by way of water being rolled out to communities, because in those municipalities there were corrupt and mismanagement tendencies where people did not get their services. And in those instances, I think there will be material bearing. So there's both a national crisis, but there's also been a local one in some instances.
Now let's shift away from this a little bit and go to a tweet that you posted in which you said underperformance is normal, obviously speaking to government officials. Take us through your thoughts when you posted this.
Well, look, Hugo, the point really is that the president is extremely lethargic with the power that he possesses on his hands. It's as if he has an inability to utilize it. By now, I would have hoped he would have reconfigured his cabinet and get the type of cabinet that he so desires and believes can deliver on him. I have no doubt the president knows the characters in his cabinet that are most notorious and could potentially compromise him and his government, and have continued to do that. And, you know, in a normal country, Hugo, these blackouts, electricity blackouts, which we call load shedding, the Minister of the Department of Public Enterprise, for example, would have long resigned, because it's quite clear he, along with the board and the management at ESCOM, just can't keep our lights on. So why should he remain at the political principal level? And then, I mean, I list other people like Mantashe, who has been embroiled in these corruption allegations, but also his role as well in the energy issue has not assisted us. He has not rolled out as much of licenses as it is expected to independent power producers to allow municipalities to really, in real time, be able to procure their energy in different ways. So the point, Hugo, is to say we have accommodated this incompetence, we have accommodated these compromised individuals to the detriment of our state. And I think as citizens, we have a responsibility to speak out. We have a responsibility to make sure that we talk to power and hold power accountable, especially when the person whose prerogative is to appoint and at times, you know, dismiss ministers from cabinet, the president seems not to be acting on those powers. And I think part of it is political reasoning. So he probably fancies himself for a second term. Therefore, he must upset, but not upset significantly people to a point that he might compromise his own politics. Now, I've always felt if you play the politics that much to a point of risking the viability of the country you govern, then you are not fit enough to hold office.